Hello and welcome to another review of a film that we've seen on Mubi.
This week's film is In Front of Your Face, directed by Sang-soo. So, Cliff, what did you think?
So the first thing to say is that this film is 84 minutes, and I love a film less than 90 minutes that doesn't demand too much of me. And the last film I reviewed, Decision to Leave, by Park Chan-wook, was 2 hours, 20 minutes, and I did find that a long film. So I really appreciated the brevity of this film and how much is achieved within those 84 minutes. So this is a film where we start with two sisters. We slowly learn that one of them has returned from the US, and this opening scene, which changes location, but basically this is just a long conversation that we see between these two sisters. But I was interested in it right from the start. It's beautifully paced, I think. We kind of drip fed enough details of the story and their relationship to draw us in. And I found I was drawn in really quickly. And this is another great example of kind of minimalist, slow cinema. That, as I say, this is a really long scene between the sisters. And although the location changes, they go on a walk and they go to a coffee shop. It's just full of small details and trivial conversations, but as I say, I just found it gripping. It's really interestingly shot. I think the camera is often fixed, so it feels like a set piece. It feels like a play. The story does evolve. There is a narrative, and by the time we get to the scene with the filmmaker where she reveals her big secret, I just found this scene extraordinary. It becomes really moving. It's still made with the same slow pace and the same style, but I just found it really moving when she plays the guitar, when she tells him what's happening to her. I just thought this scene was fantastic. And you know, this is a film about death. It's a film about living in the present. It's a film about noticing the small things, all things which I really am interested in and subscribe to. So by the time I understood what the film was about, I was already gripped by the film. By the time I understood what it was about, I just felt so satisfied. Now I feel I need to address the other film that we reviewed by this director, The Woman Who Ran, because I rewatched our review of it, and I really found it a difficult experience watching that film. And you loved that film. It was really interesting watching the review of it, and I thought, okay, I need to watch that film again. So since watching this film, I've watched The Woman Who Ran again, and I absolutely loved it. It's like I understand how to. I've tuned into a Sang-soo film, and I just loved The Woman Who Ran. So all the things that I didn't like about that, the kind of minimalist acting, the slightly wooden conversation, it just completely worked for me. And you know, you made some interesting interpretations of the film in that review, which, you know, I think are definitely along the right lines. And I just think his work is fascinating. His films are hard to get hold of, aren't they? Because I would love to see more of them, but I truly loved this film. And when I went back to see The Woman Who Ran again, I completely loved that film too.
That's brilliant. I'm glad you're a convert. I went back and listened to our review of The Woman Who Ran as well, because I remembered really liking it, but I'd forgotten just how taken by that film I was. I was similarly, you know, impressed by this one. I found what interested me about the first film we saw was that there's that a sense of kind of the miraculous that seems the effect so far beyond its limited means that it felt kind of unaccountable. And there was a similar effect in this film, but I found this film kind of lays out its philosophy a bit more clearly. It spells it out from the title onwards, In Front of Your Face. And I really like that it opens with prayer. She's talking to herself, but she's praying, and she says, no tomorrow, no yesterday, just today. And she touches her body. And right from the beginning, there's a sense of being grounded and presence. You know, you are here. And woven into this film, there's all kinds of references to lotteries, and someone getting an apartment through the lottery. And then the man, the guy, the nephew puts 100 whatever bill inside the wallet. And so there's this kind of, and the mentions of dreams, that she had this dream, she can't tell her before 12 o'clock. So there's this strange sense of mystery and chance and faithfulness woven into it. And then again, she prays and she drinks. This is a lovely moment. She prays and then she drinks some coffee, and she remarks upon how wonderful the coffee is. And I think, yeah, if you pray before you drink your coffee is going to taste great. There's something really mysterious and lovely about the fact that they're sisters, but they hardly know each other. And the story accounts for that one's been in the States and they're clearly sort of not particularly close. And yet the things they don't know about each other seem too peculiar for that to really explain it. Like, she thinks the sister who was an actor has got enough money to buy an apartment. She says, I haven't got any money. I've been working in a liquor store. And the other one had no idea. And yet they do seem to have a kind of a real bond and an intimacy. You're right that the style is fascinating, I think. And I feel like I got to grips with it better in this film, but it's just like the last one. The means are very straightforward. It's vigorously simple, almost always like a two-shot. The camera doesn't really do much. Sometimes the scenes are even like surprisingly ugly. There's quite a long conversation by the side of the road with bollards behind them and traffic noises. It's almost like deliberately unpleasant, the framing. And occasionally I'll make notes like, why doesn't it bother me? How is it this filmmaker can do stuff like that and it's still kind of captivating? Then there was a lovely moment where she goes back to the garden from her youth, and she's just looking around this garden, and this woman comes out. Everyone's really lovely to each other in this film as well. That's something that's really nice. And it reminded me of a scene in Petite Maman. Do you remember the bit where the mother tells the little girl that there's, if you look at the shadows at the bottom of the bed, you'll see a jaguar. And then the camera just looks at the shadows at the bottom of the bed, and you can hear the sound of the trees outside. And nothing changes. There's no like trick photography or anything, but the moment is just beautiful. You know, it's got like touched with mystery and beauty and transcendence. And it's just a great testament to what you can do when you just point the camera at something with the right kind of attitude, and you infuse the film with a mysticism and a strangeness that elevates the whole thing, so that everything you're watching, no matter how kind of trivial, starts to feel miraculous. And I realized that when she tells the story at the end about when she's 17 and she had that feeling that she wanted to die because she could kind of comprehend the fullness of reality in her heart. And I realized that this filmmaker's overarching philosophy, at least as far as you can kind of extrapolate that from two films, but it seems to say that the fundamental mystery and the fundamental astonishing fact that we exist is the thing that we can't get over. And it's the most thrilling and exciting mystery you can imagine. And the best way of constantly sort of bringing us towards that realization is through the everyday, the actual fact of things, the things in front of your face. It is not through really dramatic, thrilling, horrifying stories, because if you do that, then that is what we pay attention to, the story and how thrilling and exciting it is, and the stylishness of the camera work. All of that is a distraction away from presence, the simple fact that you exist right here, right now. And so I felt really connected to this filmmaker's sense of purpose and his intent in this film. And I was really moved as well by the fact that even given that, there is actually a conventional like narrative revelation. She tells him she's dying, and it's not the sort of revelation you would really expect from the film that came before, because it's, it's quite a straightforward sort of dramatic device. And yet it felt there was something kind of humble about using that dramatic device as the hinge for the narrative, and for her to express this thing about presence and being alive and in the moment. And then, of course, it kind of really beautifully undercuts itself with her listening to his message the next day, and she just laughs. And it was just lovely, the way she laughs at that. So I found it really, really moving film, lovely experience. And yeah, as you say, it's a shame that his work isn't all over the place over here as well. It seems quite difficult to get hold of, but he's pretty remarkable.
It's interesting, that point about the philosophy is more explicit this time. I think we seem to agree that the theme of these two films, the underlying philosophy, is very similar, although they are quite different. And the first one is much more mysterious, much more enigmatic, The Woman Who Ran. Whereas this one, as you say, just it's in the title, in front of your face. It's much more explicit, and also it's much more, nothing that big is happening in The Woman Who Ran. Whereas here there is a big event, but somehow the triviality of everyday life and just the miracle of the present moment in those trivial details is just really brought out, and that's much more important than the fact that she's dying. And it's so, yeah, the two of them together just make a, having watched the two of them in 2 days, they're a fantastic watch together, because clearly this guy has a lot of really interesting things to say, and is really good at crafting something that, as you say, that's so simple that actually says so much. And you make reference to the lottery and the money in the wallet and the little kind of details along the way, and it just made me think about how in the Woman Who Ran, there's a lot of discussion about the discount that she got when she was renting her flat. It felt a very similar kind of conversation, and in each of the 3 acts of The Woman Who Ran, there's this discussion of different floors, of the floor above or the floor below, and I love the way he works with these kind of trivial details, which actually are probably really significant in terms of the meaning of the story. It's interesting that you say that everyone's lovely in this film, because they are, but the sibling relationship is really superficial, as you say. They don't really know very much about her. I mean, clearly she's been in quite a few films, but the sister thinks that she's just had like her face in one scene of something, whereas the director has seen her in a number of films. Clearly she has a much bigger role. And so, the family relationship is really superficial. So although they're nice to each other, it's always awkward. When they meet the son's girlfriend in the cafeteria, it's really awkward, but everyone's being friendly and nice on the surface. And the director is really nice to her. It's a lovely moment that they share. But then the fact that he pulls out and that he got carried away, and obviously, he's married and he can't go through with what he promised her, is really disappointing. So I think but she's not disappointing. The fact that she laughs at it, I think, gives her so much power, really. But maybe there's something about the preciousness of artists and filmmakers here, because it's like he's saying, oh, it'll take 6 months to, normally takes 6 months to get a first draft of the script. I could perhaps do it in 6 months. And she's only got 3 months, and she's ready to go and make the work today. And maybe there's something here about, artwork is always in the present moment. It's always, let's just do it, and so he was a nice guy. I agree that, and the sister was nice, but there was just always something kind of, some disappointment in other people here. And I think that's in The Woman Who Ran as well. There's disappointment in other people. But yeah, clearly there's a lot to say and enjoy with this film.
That's a really nice point you make about, you know, art being in the present moment. Perhaps that's the point he's making. There's something really deceptively simple about the filmmaking style, isn't there? I remember thinking this when I watched Woman Who Ran. In both films, or certainly in this one anyway, the credits take about 15 seconds because there's 4 people in it and he did everything else. And so you watch it and just, it gives me the sense that let's just go out and do it, you know, that you could make a film. And the filmmaker talks about, he talked about his own films as being described as like short stories. And I think in a similar way, Hong Sang-soo's film has that kind of deceptive simplicity, you know, it's limpid and yet really mysterious. And of course, to bring out the effects that he does is tremendously skillful, and very few people are able to do it, and yet he makes it look so easy, you know. The other thing I was going to say is that in both films as well, there is a kind of, the only time you hear music is this Julie Cruz kind of strange music, in this one right at the beginning. I wrote down that I bet his favorite film is Mulholland Drive. I think there's definitely bits and pieces of that in here. It was a lovely film.
Yeah, really good. So we both highly recommend it.
For sure.
Good. Next, I'm reviewing After Sun, directed by Charlotte Wells. See you next time.